Okay, so you've sent us some really great stuff lately. It's clear you're digging into how to, really get knowledge quickly and deeply, find those aha moments, and maybe avoid that feeling of just drowning in information.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we love doing here, getting into the weeds with you.
And one source you shared, it was a YouTube summary of Manabu Mizuno's book, Sense Begins with Knowledge, that really hit on this theme.
Ah, yes. Mizuno. That's a fascinating take on sense.
Right. So let's unpack this idea of sense, that gut feeling, good judgment. How do we actually develop it, especially in a way that's efficient, that sticks?
And the core idea, the mission for this deep dive, really, is exploring how sense isn't some, innate talent you're born with.
Yeah, exactly. But something you can build
It,
through knowledge.
it kind of flips the script, doesn't it? We often think, oh, they just have good sense.
Yeah, like magic.
But Mizuno reframes it. It's a skill, something you cultivate by actively learning, gathering info. Sense here is about making good judgments, creating effective outcomes, because you understand the information and the context deeply.
And it's tricky because sense isn't something you can just, put a number on easily.
Right.
The video uses that example of a black company. Makes tons of money, but ethically not so great.
So does it have good business sense just because profits are high?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
And the video implies probably not. True sense looks beyond just the numbers. It considers the wider picture.
Which really challenges how we even define success, doesn't it? Profit matters, obviously, in business.
Sure.
But it's not the only thing. Ethics, sustainability, those factor into a company's overall sense, too.
And you see it in other areas, like fashion. Having fashion sense isn't just about owning pricey designer labels.
Definitely not.
It's about knowing what works for the situation, right?
Exactly.
Expressing your own style well, making choices that are appropriate and considered smart choices.
Smart choices, exactly, not just collecting expensive things.
And the video really hammers this home. Sense isn't some bolt from the blue.
No sudden inspiration?
It argues it's built on something, well, maybe more accessible. Understanding what's ordinary.
Okay, this ordinary concept, let's dig into that. It sounds a bit plain.
It does at first glance, but the video makes a really strong case that knowing what's normal, what's the standard, is actually crucial. It's your benchmark.
It's how you judge good or bad. You need that reference point.
Yeah. Think about the ramen example they used.
Oh, right, the ramen.
If you've only ever eaten at one local shop, your idea of ordinary ramen is super limited. Maybe it's great, maybe not, but only relative to that one experience.
But someone who's tried ramen all over Japan, they have a much more refined palate, a better sense of what's truly great or even just solidly ordinary.
Their standard is just way more informed.
So basically, the more knowledge and experience you rack up,
The sharper your internal definition of ordinary becomes.
and that sharpens your judgment, lets you make better calls, create things with a better sense of what works, what resonates, whether it's a product, an outfit.
Or even art. Which brings us to that whole idea of artistic sense.
Right, because that's often seen as purely innate, the born artist idea.
But the video challenges that too. With that simple example, coloring animals.
Ah, yes. If you color a giraffe bright yellow or a croc bright green,
It just feels off, even if you're not an art expert.
Right.
Why? Because we have this basic shared knowledge of what they actually look like.
that basic knowledge acts as a kind of reality check.
Yeah, sure, a giraffe could be yellow in a cartoon, but for a realistic drawing to feel sensible, it needs to align with that base knowledge.
And professionals, as the video points out, they often study things like anatomy, color theory. It's not all just feeling.
It's knowledge underpinning the intuition.
Exactly. Even something as basic as the color wheel we learned in school, that helps you make sensible color choices day to day. Coordinating clothes, making slides look good.
Knowledge is the foundation, even for aesthetics.
Okay, so some of you listening might be thinking, all right, sense is cool for artists or designers, but I work in finance or IT. Is this relevant?
Good question.
Hmm.
But the video argues yes, absolutely, because sense is defined as the ability to optimize the things you can't easily quantify.
And that's valuable everywhere. It's a universal skill, really.
Remember the water analogy?
Oh yeah, serving water. Someone with good sense thinks about the situation. Cold water with lemon when it's hot. Maybe hot tea if it's cold.
Versus the person who just plunks down lukewarm water every single time.
You appreciate the thoughtful one more, right? That thoughtfulness is sense in action, optimizing the non-quantifiable stuff.
And the point is, society increasingly values that. We went from wanting quantity to wanting quality.
And now, as tech gets more standardized,
Sense is becoming the new edge. the differentiator.
It makes you think. When products have similar features, similar quality, what makes you pick one over the other?
Often it's the intangibles, right? The design, the feel, the whole experience.
Which is all driven by sense. Aesthetic sense, user experience sense.
The video brought up Japan's focus on manufacturing. Top-notch quality, technically brilliant.
But sometimes they struggled, the video suggests, because the presentation, that overall sense of desirability, wasn't always there.
Contrast that with, say, Apple under Steve Jobs.
Right. It wasn't just about the tech. It was about beautiful design, a strong aesthetic. Sense was baked into everything.
Function and form.
And looking forward, the video suggests maybe tech breakthroughs won't be quite as rapid fire.
Which means?
Sense becomes even more crucial for companies to stand out, and for individuals, too, among people with similar hard skills.
So a key advantage in a competitive world.
Yeah.
Being able to judge well, understand those unquantifiable needs.
Definitely.
Then there was that memorable story. The 5-year-old's bread.
Oh, the dung beetle bread?
Yes. Technically, maybe it was perfectly baked.
Yeah.
But aesthetically, yeah, not appealing.
It's a funny but powerful point about how much presentation matters. It shapes our perception instantly.
And that applies everywhere. Product packaging, how an office is laid out.
Even how you organize your desk or your files, visual presentation, guided by sense, affects how things are received.
It's not just about looking pretty either. Remember the ramen shop example?
The super clean, white, minimalist one?
Yeah. While it looks good in one sense, it might not really put off serious ramen lovers who expect a certain, maybe grittier vibe.
So sense here means understanding your audience, the context, the whole brand experience you're creating, not just following a design trend blindly.
And controlling that perception, that builds brand power. For a company, a product, even for yourself.
And that ability relies heavily on having good sense.
Okay, so we're convinced. Sense is important. How do we get more?
The practical part.
The video circles back here. Remember, the foundation is knowing the ordinary.
And how do you know the ordinary? Through knowledge.
Which leads to the core idea. Sense is basically accumulated knowledge.
It's not mysterious, it's built. Like the writing analogy they used.
Right. Someone who knows more letters, more words, more grammar, they can write much richer, more nuanced things.
More knowledge gives you more tools, more possibilities.
It's like having a bigger piece of paper to draw on.
Exactly. More knowledge expands your canvas, allows for a freer, better drawing. That's your sense improving.
And this isn't just for creative fields. The video mentioned, like, a street cleaner needing to really know what clean means beyond the manual.
Or a convenience store worker needing to grasp the essence of convenience. It's about understanding the underlying principles, which comes from knowledge.
That allows for better judgment, better actions, better sense.
Okay, so how do we build this knowledge efficiently? The video gave 3 pretty concrete tips.
Right. Tip 1, know the classics.
The head.
The established standards. The things that have lasted that are refined.
Like Levi's 501s for jeans. If you understand the 501, you've got a solid foundation for understanding all denim. Because those classics are often already optimized in a way. They give you that benchmark, that ordinary we talked about. The video even suggests searching online for, like, category taiban to find them.
Okay, good tip. What's number 2?
Understand current trends. Ryuku.
So the opposite of classics, often.
Pretty much. And knowing both the timeless and the timely gives you a much broader perspective, expands your knowledge base significantly.
How do you track trends efficiently, though? It feels like they change constantly.
The video had a simple suggestion. Just browse a few current magazines at a convenience store.
Really? That's it?
Apparently, it's a quick way to get a snapshot of what's popular, what aesthetics are circulating right now. Efficient, right?
Huh. Okay. And the third tip?
Analyze commonalities in popular things. Look for the patterns, the rules behind why successful things work.
Actively observe and analyze.
Yeah. There was that interesting anecdote about store entrances. Why do customer-friendly ones often have darker floors?
Oh, right, the psychological thing. In Japan, with taking shoes off, maybe a super bright, clean floor feels intimidating, like you'll make it dirty.
That was the author's theory. It shows how analyzing these subtle details, these commonalities, can reveal deeper insights. It's critical thinking applied to observation.
So it's not just about absorbing info, it's about actively looking for the why.
Exactly. Gathering knowledge, understanding classics and trends, and then analyzing why things resonate. That's how you build sense.
So the big picture then, developing sense, isn't passive at all.
Not one bit. It requires actively seeking knowledge, understanding the fundamentals and what's happening now, and constantly analyzing,
It's an ongoing process, learning, refining, building that framework of knowledge.
which then lets you make better judgments, get better outcomes, whether it's at work, in your hobbies, anywhere.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Key takeaway. Sense isn't magic. You're not just born with it or without it.
Right. It's something you can actively develop.
By building your knowledge base, understanding the ordinary in whatever field you're interested in, and paying attention to both the timeless classics and the current trends.
So even if you feel like you weren't gifted with some natural sense, you can cultivate it by consciously seeking out and processing information.
Absolutely.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you listening right now. Now that you know sense is something learnable, something built on knowledge,
Mhm.
what area are you going to focus on?
Yeah, where in your life or your interest will you start intentionally building that foundation? What classics will you check out? What trends will you start analyzing?
Because that journey to better judgment, to sharper sense, it really starts with that commitment to keep learning.